Hey, this is Jeff Waters from the Canadian metal band Annihilator, and I'm here to tell you about a new product from the fantastic pedal maker SolidGoldFX from Montreal, Canada. They have worked with me for about a year and a half in making what I hope is one of the best overdrive pedals ever, and I'll tell you why in a second. This is the Devil Drive pedal, and I've been using a Boss OD1, I think one of the first two revisions. I've got a few of those pedals, but I've been using the Boss OD1 for most of my career with my band. And the reason I used that was because the music that I do with my band is the rhythms sometimes are pretty intricate or fast picking, and the solos need to be clear because sometimes they're quite fast too. So having like a distortion pedal or one of these really more modern heavy duty distortion pedals, high gain things, was not something I needed, because it would turn a lot of the fast stuff to mush and you wouldn't be able to decipher what I'm doing, and it would bug me. But anyway, so when I met Greg from SolidGoldFX, he'd asked me what I was using. And I said, well, in the studio, most of the time it's been the Boss OD1. And he said, well, can we build you something that would improve upon it? And I thought, well, I don't know how you would, but he asked me to write down a list of the different things I would like to, if I was building the pedal. I'm not much of a technical type person, but with my ears, I told him what I would like, and different kinds of jacks in the pedal, and true bypass, switching, and many other things, and maybe a bump in the higher mid area. And he said, why don't you send me your pedals? We'll take a real good listen to the one that I like, and not clone it, but come up with something just as good and then improve it. And that's kind of what we did, absolutely what we did with this thing. And I no longer need to use those early Boss OD1s, because when you hear this one, you'll know why. It's got two modes on it. It toggles between a vintage setting and modern setting. Vintage is more my custom sound, and modern was the idea of Greg at SolidGoldFX, because he said, well, that's great that you have your perfect tone, but it would be awesome if we could work in a second set of options for people who wanted to flick it over and just get a total more modern distorted overdrive, high gain kind of thing, which I use sometimes for an effect in the studio, but mainly I'm just sticking to the vintage one that I co-created with him. Vintage mode, toggle switch to the right. It basically bypasses the tone knob here and only uses the level, volume, boost, whatever you want to call that, and the gain. Now, obviously we all know what that does. It gives you a certain amount of overdrive. My settings are very complex. I usually put the two things straight up, right, 12 o'clock. Why, I have no idea, but it always seems to work, so I just deal with it. I put this in front of an amp, obviously, like an EVH 5153, for example, or before I hooked up with EVH, I was using Getting Core Blade and Marshalls, JCM 800s, things like that. And this pedal works fantastic with any amp. You don't have to put the high gain up on your amplifier. In fact, it's better to sort of back that off to a 50% kind of level on your amp gain setting, and then try starting out with these two main buttons straight up, and then just adjust it for your taste. And here's some examples of the vintage mode. Vintage mode, I've got the volume pot on my guitar rolled down to 3 or 4. Sometimes it gives a bit of a rock sound. Find when you roll the volume pot down with this pedal, it really brings out the neck and the tone of the guitar a lot. It's really clear. Vintage mode, I'm just going to roll the volume pot full blast on the guitar to get the sound that I used to and that I like. But the setup was a EVH 5153. Didn't even listen to it. I just put the basic settings where I know I can start with in the studio or live. Same with the Devil Drive pedal. I just put the volume and the overdrive straight up 12 o'clock and just roll the volume up full. And it's not going to be the most perfect sound in the world, because you want to tweak it and play with the buttons on the amp and the microphone and the Devil Drive settings. But this gives you an idea of just plug it in and go where you can start from. Vintage mode again, and this is I guess because a lot of stuff I do has some pretty fast picking in it. Too much overdrive or distortion or gain or whatever on a sound kind of makes it a bunch of mess. So this is a clean kind of tone for fast picking. You'll see what I mean here, hopefully. Vintage mode for soloing, very awesome, because if you are playing a solo, you hear everything. Now that can be bad because if you make a mistake or a weird noise or whatever, it's going to show up. But if you nail it and you do it well, it comes out very clear, and same with the squeals. Ready? Modern mode, the second mode on this awesome Devil Drive pedal. This was a very important mode, despite the fact that I have a preference for the vintage mode for what I do. Modern mode was very important because we wanted to offer something that would appeal to distortion and overdrive users of a more modern sound, a little messier, a little less mid, higher output. I'm going to read from a couple of notes here just to make sure I don't miss anything. It's got slightly reduced mids in the modern setting, increased bottom end versus the more vintage, less bottom end mode. It basically gives it a bit more balls and muscle to the sound, and it's especially good for bands that like to tune down, which I do with my band sometimes. The interactive tone control here is active on the modern versus the vintage mode where it does nothing, and it's usable throughout the entire rotation. It's not just a sweet spot, so it's never too bright, never too dark. So here's some examples of the little more overdriven, ballsier modern tone. Modern tone. The guitar is still at 440 standard E tuning or whatever, and a lot of modern metal bands tune down their music, half step, full step, or way down there. But this guitar is still the same as the other clips. It's in standard E440. Yeah. All right, so there you have it, the SolidGoldFX Devil Drive, Jeff Waters' signature overdrive pedal. Try it out if you can at a local music store. You're gonna love this pedal, whether you're into hard rock, rock and roll, even blues, and obviously metal. It's got so many different types of grit on this thing that you're gonna love it. And you can capture the old classic sounds of some of your favorite heavy metal bands from the 80s. And that's it. It's a great price pedal, high quality. Check out their awesome products at solidgoldfx.com. Check out my band Annihilator at annihilatormetal.com. Good luck spelling that one, by the way. And thank you very much for listening. Rock on, man.